Okay, a former CBC employee has been talking today um, about the CBC. There are some fantastic clips here. Let's take a look at a few. This is Travis Danraj, I think it's pronounced. He now has a podcast called Can't Be Censored. But let's take a look at this post here. It says former CBC host reveals that the CBC management banned him from requesting an interview with Polyev and threatened to have him pulled off the air for interviewing Lanceman. Let's take a look here.
You mentioned at one point that CBC management actually prevented you from interviewing conservative leader Pierre Polyev on your show. Can you describe what happened there?
Yeah, well, I basically wasn't allowed to pick up the phone and talk to conservatives. I have some G chats here, which I just want to, read you part of this. I'm talking to my senior producer. I'm saying, okay, this is an editorial discussion. Can we get a conservative perspective on this is essentially what I'm saying. It is a no to the conservatives, I'm told. We can't chase anyone from the entire party. The chase is with PNP. So if Power and Politics is not able to secure a conservative or somebody that presents an alternate perspective.
Look, if you watch CBC on an even somewhat regular basis, this is not surprising at all. It is mostly left-wing points of view. And when there is a right-wing point of view on CBC, it looks to me like more of a controlled view. Some of the people on there with right-wing perspectives are smart and they're fine guests, but it looks to me like they're carefully curated to give a point of view that's only a little bit right of center.
Then
that's my take. Like a populist conservative, I don't think ever gets on CBC with their take.
We're not allowed to. I'm told at one point, we're sure that there's a myriad of other types of interesting guests that you can chase outside of the conservatives. Can I be included on conversations with Power and Politics? That's not how we work. I say to management, by playing petty office politics, we feed into conservative narratives that we have a bias against them. Canada Tonight is a melting pot of news of the day, and politics and decisions from it largely impact Canadians. So we need flexibility to respond to emerging stories. So yes, I wasn't even allowed to pick up the phone and call to request Pierre Polyev. Look at what happened when I had Melissa Lanceman on my show, right? I was threatened to be pulled off the air, which CBC then said in a news statement they didn't threaten to do that. There are recordings of them trying to do this.
Why do you think they were doing that?
I mean, there's an effort to essentially protect those in Ottawa in terms of their perspectives on these things, in terms of who they want on the show. It should be about.
Yeah, I'll just try to talk quieter for this one because I don't think I can get the volume any higher. Thanks, Googs. It's just this video on X. I think I basically have it blasted. So hopefully the next video, this one's just about over. Hopefully the next one has a little bit higher audio.
We did an interview with Karen Johnson, my co-host on the new podcast I'm doing. It is out right now. She's another former CBC employee that is talking about the toxic culture. She said that she alleges that she was called a brown Barbie, a bimbo, but she says that it's a very
we'll get to that clip.
High school culture. And these are things that this is fine. If you have hosts doing that, it's not fine, but okay. But management, you are responsible for dealing with it. And so if management is not going to do anything, if the president of the CBC is going to come here and expect a tongue lashing and then be able to go back to the CBC and continue to get funding without accountability,
a lot of funding too. It's incredible how much funding the CBC gets.
These practices will continue. So
with all that funding, I mean, obviously they should make a real deliberate effort on a daily basis to be balanced. But if you watch the CBC, they don't. It's like you'd have to really, I think, stretch yourself in a strange position to make the case that CBC is a fair and balanced program. I think CNN in the United States is actually more fair and balanced. CNN will have people on like Scott Jennings, Kevin O'Leary, who will actually give an alternate perspective to what some people on the panel are saying. That almost never happens at CBC. Usually the quote unquote conservative, like I said, is just a little right of center.
Shame is clearly not enough to get the CBC to a place where they will hold themselves accountable. So it's incumbent upon this committee to do that.
So we have some more clips here. And again, some of the conservatives that are on, some of the conservatives that get on CBC are actually fine, because some people truly are just whatever kind of center-right conservatives, and that's all good. But it is just finding this here. Okay, we'll play this clip now too. I believe these are all going to be unique clips, so we will not see the same stuff twice. But if I notice we're doing that, I'll just go to another clip. I have quite a few here. Maybe this video will be 30 minutes long, this live stream, or something like that. So we'll take a look here. What do you all think of the CBC watching the live stream? I mean, it's so incredible. But again, the Conservative Party of Canada should be pointing this out more often. But I'm not going to talk about that much in this video.
Appreciate it. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
Hello, comment. How are you doing?
As a kid growing up in Alberta, I wasn't like most of my friends. Every night, I watched The National with Knowlton Nash.
Based.
He represented a public broadcaster that belonged to Canadians. Not to power, not to party, but to the public. And that is the CBC that I believed in. Now, many Canadians know the story about one of my tweets. In April 2024, I publicly stated that Canada Tonight had requested an interview with then CBC President Catherine Tate, and the request was declined. Facts. Shortly after, I was removed from the air. Now, on May 7th, 2024, Tate told this very...
Yeah, Dave, I hear you. I think so many Canadians, though, still trust the CBC, which, I think that gets reflected in who wins elections. It's incredible that the CBC has so much power.
Committee.
I think the Canadian media apparatus can basically go with whatever narrative they want, and it seems to work. I still don't think that's been disrupted in a meaningful way in Canada. If you look at America, a lot of Americans are very skeptical of media narratives. Of course, not everybody. Some people go along with it, but Trump definitely threw a monkey wrench in all of that. And a huge part of his campaign in 2016 was just going at the media, questioning the media, calling out the media. Something like that, I think, should happen in Canada. Some version of that to say, why do Canadians believe the things they believe, and are they all true? Are most of them true? Are some of them true? Because I certainly think a lot of Canadians have things in their head that do not reflect reality, or maybe they'd vote a different way. Canada is not doing great in so many different ways, but the voting patterns do not change.
Was, quote, not aware of any repercussions. Yet 24 hours earlier, ATIP records show her vice president, Barb Williams, briefed her directly about my situation. And that matters because trust matters. The tweet was not the beginning. It was the breaking point. For months prior, tensions had been building, not over performance, but over control. While I was publicly held up as a bold, diverse host, my ability to lead the very program carrying my face and name was quietly being stripped away. CBC's stated commitment to diversity contrasted with realities of tokenism. Still, I pushed forward, creating a nightly panel to showcase real diversity, including of thought.
Yes, let's go.
I questioned unequal pay. Why, for example, one contributor who was Indigenous always needed to be paid while others weren't. When a prominent Black journalist requested compensation after appearing doing the exact same job, I was told to reconsider booking him moving forward. I attempted to end this discriminatory practice. Instead, the panel was canceled.
Holy.
When it came to politics, interviews were blocked under
So the one Indigenous guest was getting paid all the time and other people weren't. That's what it said. Sounds like there. That is crazy. Again, though, totally unsurprising. The last 10, 15 years, the Canadian culture, I think, has become Indigenous people better, sadly.
contributor who was Indigenous always. I questioned unequal pay. Why, for example, one contributor who was Indigenous always needed to be paid while others weren't. When a
That is so unfair. That is such bullshit.
prominent Black journalist requested compensation after appearing doing the exact same job, I was told to reconsider booking him moving forward.
Do you think so, Wild Rose? I don't know this guy's full story, but yeah. So I'm not going to really defend him here because I don't know that much about him, but I appreciate what he's saying today. I'll give him props for this. This is, I think, at least somewhat brave. This is what he's doing.
I attempted
It's
to
easier to just cower and hide and not do this. So I'll give him props for this for sure.
end this discriminatory practice. Instead, the panel was canceled. When it came to politics, interviews were blocked under guardrails governed by an internal document never made public titled Parameters for Political Guests. Political access was centralized, booking decisions controlled elsewhere. It did not happen once. It became a pattern. It became the standard. Power in Politics, hosted by David Cochrane, was given gatekeeping authority over which politicians could appear on Canada Tonight. When I questioned that control and who was in control, I was viewed as disruptive. Now, at the same time, I raised concerns about a toxic environment. After I sat down with Speaker Greg Fergus for a
Yeah, it is good. That's how I feel too. Ultimately, it's good. Someone has to say something like this. So I don't know the whole backstory or what he was like, whatever before, but this is ultimately good. Somebody eventually has to do something like this because I don't think the current Conservative Party of Canada does like make statements like this nearly enough. I mean, I've talked about that before. I think the current CPC, I don't even know what they're doing. They're so pathetic. I think it's so frustrating to watch what they do. Once every week, Polyev will make a somewhat bold statement and then go back into hiding.
conversation on Black History Month, Chief Political Correspondent Rosemary Barton circulated internal communications questioning my program, copying senior leadership, insinuating she or Mr. Cochrane should have done the interview.
Jeez.
It was an intimidation tactic, which management ignored.
Holy, I'm going to play that again. That's what the heck.
I was viewed as disruptive. Now, at the same time, I raised concerns about a toxic environment. After I sat down with Speaker Greg Fergus for a conversation on Black History Month, Chief Political Correspondent Rosemary Barton circulated internal communications questioning my program, copying senior leadership.
Oh,
insinuating
man.
She or Mr. Cochrane should have done the interview. It was an intimidation tactic, which management ignored. I and others raised concerns about bullying behavior by senior figures, including Mr. Cochrane. But while he remained on air, I faced discipline and marginalization. Now, the transcripts of these meetings show the issue was not about my journalism.
That's incredible. David Cochrane recently announced he's going to not be posting on X anymore. No accountability to the free market. Just have your show on CBC, taxpayer funds, whatever. Don't need to engage with the public. So ridiculous.
But about reputational risk to the corporation. I received a written warning carrying the threat of termination. I was placed under confidentiality restrictions that prevented me from correcting public and internal narratives.
Wow.
CBC silenced and intimidated me simply for trying to do my job and fulfill my public service role to Canadians. Now, this is not about left or right.
Man, that is incredible what he just said there. That is amazing. How's the volume? Is it better? Is this clip a little bit louder? I think it is, but I don't know. You couldn't have a white dude do what he's doing. That wouldn't even be heard. I think you probably could now. I think maybe you're right. Maybe they wouldn't even want to have him in this committee if it was a white person, but I think you could. I think white people need to just start speaking more and just say, fuck it. Who cares if there's, I mean, it's easy to say that though, when you have a certain type of job, like if you have a family and a job that you really cannot be fired from, it's a lot harder to speak out. I understand that, but yeah.
It's not about one tweet or one career. It's about systemic control, tokenism, selective enforcement, and a toxic culture where intimidation went unchecked. When I refused to waive my rights under the Canadian Human Rights Act in a proposed confidentiality agreement right here and a gag order, essentially, my role was not renewed. My union, tasked with protecting my rights as an employee, told me explicitly, quote, "It's very much a normal thing that we use."
Man, unions are so useless. In my experience, I've never had a good experience with a union. Every union I've ever had, when you actually need them, they give you bullshit answers like that. I know in some cases, they're helpful to other people, but every single time I've went to a union in like maybe 3 occasions, they don't do anything. It seems like the people that work at the union just collect their salary, and then when actual problems come up, they give you some bureaucratic mess answer that's the exact same you'd get with the employer or whoever. I think unions, maybe in America, unions are more useful. I don't know, but I've only had brutal experiences with unions.
After 25 years in journalism, my career ended. That dream I had as a kid of working at CBC shattered along with my trust in it. Now, inside the newsroom, the message was unmistakable and did not need to be spoken. I raised concerns. I challenged centralized control and bias. I fought for real diversity and equal standards. I tried to do my job as a journalist.
The thing is, you can have way more of an impact now in independent media in Canada than you could at the CBC. The CBC, you don't even need to hear these testimonials to know that there's a crazy ideological bent at CBC. Just watch the show for a few hours. You know, somewhere in that organization, there's incentivizing, or people are being incentivized to go left wing.
Within months, I was pulled off the air, disciplined, restricted from speaking, stripped of my primetime program, and eventually out altogether. Now, if you were still working there, would you feel safe raising similar concerns? This is how silence becomes culture. It's how whistleblowers are intimidated. Public institutions do not weaken from scrutiny. They weaken when they avoid it. The CBC that I believed in was strong enough to withstand accountability. If it is to endure as a public broadcaster worthy of Canadians' trust and over $1.4 billion of their money.
Yeah, which is incredible. That's something like $30 per person per year from Canadians in tax money. That's a lot of tax money to an organization that should be able to just exist in the free market if it's so helpful.
It must be strong enough to withstand it again. Accountability is not destruction, it is survival. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, shout out to him there. That was a good testimonial. Oh, whoops. 1 sec. I'll go back here. So that was good. Yeah, I definitely think what he said today there is great. I still have a little bit more to come here, plus some other statements from a different woman as well, who they called, I think, something like Brown Barbie, apparently, or allegedly. Okay, this one here, just a short clip where Tamara Litch, famous from the Freedom Convoy, gets brought up here.
Move some of this forward. When it came to Mr. Cochrane, this is during the convoy, for example. We were talking about Tamara Litch, who was an individual who was involved in the convoy. We were doing a story around that. And off the hand remarks can be made at times. And I said, I think that she has a couple of different last names. People who live in trailers usually do. Okay, off-color remark. But if this is a pattern, right?
Again, that's this guy's accounting of that, but that is brutal. I saw another tweet on X or whatever post saying Don Cherry. Remember Don Cherry got in so much trouble for saying you people that come here, whatever it is. He said that on air, but what Don Cherry said is nothing. That's just how people talk. You people. Is that so? If you're offended by the phrase you people, you're just a snowflake that needs to get outside more. But this is a pretty rude thing that Cochrane allegedly said.
We were doing a story around that. And off the hand remarks can be made at times. And I said, I think that she has a couple of different last names. People who live in trailers usually do. Okay, off-color remark. But if this
Yeah, it's not a great thing to say. The thing is, I'm against people even being fired for that. I don't think he should be fired for that, but it's not a nice thing to say to somebody, even when they're not present.
is a pattern, right? You have to, if your staff on your own show are raising this, if people are leaving the program, you have to look a little bit deeper into it, as opposed to pulling me off the air for saying it's unfortunate the president didn't come on the show.
Really, Wild Rose, I've been told to my face by Government of Canada employee agency staff that there's no resources for me because I am a white man. Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of situations in Canada where it's better to be anything but a white man when you're looking for a job. There's tons of cases like that, unfortunately. Maybe you could just say you're gay. Maybe that would help you. Just say, oh, I'm LGBT, but you don't have to prove it. But trust me, I'm LGBT. So give me this job. Okay, we'll take a look at this one here. I think this is a different clip as well. We're getting close to the end here, but yeah, we'll just take a look at this here.
During your time, or do you have knowledge of the PMO, the Prime Minister's office, ever talking to the CBC with regard to how a news angle should be covered or taken, or content that should be reported on?
I know concerns were raised. From people that were on Power and Politics. I have documentation related to those concerns being raised. And I know that the folks that raise these concerns, they're fearful of, exactly the same thing that all of these other folks are fearful of, right? Professional reprisal. But I also know that this was raised repeatedly. And whether or not there was influence from the former Prime Minister's office in terms of editorial decisions that were being made on Power and Politics or not, even the allegation of that on its face needs to be investigated. And from my understanding, and CBC can put out a statement correcting me if I'm wrong on this, I don't think that there was ever an investigation. That is a serious concern, right? I mean, if there are repeated, allegations made about perhaps there's too much influence here. Now, let me just say this as well.
Again, if you watch CBC, there's no way there's not an effort to be made to have a left-wing point of view be the dominant narrative on CBC. There's just no way. It's not natural when you watch CBC, the people on there giving their points of view. That is not just a open marketplace of ideas, and they wouldn't be booking guests from an entire spectrum of political perspectives. There's no way CBC has that philosophy. They might say they do, but just watch the program.
Was a reporter in Ottawa. I've been at Queen's Park. I was the Queen's Park bureau chief for Global. Reporters have sources. We all know that. But there's a line where that leads into editorial decision-making, and you have to make sure that that is clear. And if there's even an allegation that may have been crossed, you have to look deeper.
I guess to that end, then, we know that public trust toward the media in general is on the decline. We know that that is true with the CBC. There's no exception there. In your mind, then, is that lack of trust justified?
I think that right now, the CBC, by continuing to put out statements and to come to these committees and say, yeah, we might have a little bit of a problem, but, overall, we're not biased. That's gaslighting Canadians. Canadians can see that this is an issue, right? And this is folks have accused me of coming here being a cheerleader for the Conservatives. I am not a cheerleader for the Conservatives. I'm sorry. I'm not a cheerleader for the Liberals either. I was trying to do my job as a journalist, and part of that is being balanced. And so when you have, when I was pulled into these disciplinary meetings, I was told that it was editorializing because I put that Catherine Tate wouldn't come on the program, and it's unfortunate. This is unfortunate, was editorializing, right? And was perceived bias. There's a lot of perceived bias going on that I don't see any discipline around. So I think CBC needs to have, a wake-up call here in terms of accountability. And really, that's incumbent upon this committee. I have made recommendations. There are 11 recommendations in terms of how to, move some of this forward. When it came to Mr. Cochrane, this is during the convoy, for example. We were talking about Tamara Litch. Who,
Yeah, I'll go forward because I already played this part.
That by an additional 150 to the tune of about.
unfortunate the president didn't come on the show.
So the Canadian public is paying for this to the tune of about $1.4 billion. And then, of course, the government also increased that by an additional $150 million. At the end of the day, then the public is the shareholder and also the ones that are supposed to be benefiting from this news coverage. In your estimation, what changes are needed to actually restore that trust?
Well, I think that there needs to be an overhaul when it comes to management. You have my specific recommendations, but I will also say this. I am not here as somebody who does not believe in public broadcasting. I was on Jonavision. I started as an audience coordinator when I was 19 years old.
I don't believe in it. I'll say that. I don't believe in this public broadcasting. What's the point of it now? Everyone has a phone. There's so many resources to get news. I think the CBC can exist for northern remote communities. I don't think the CBC has to be getting any taxpayer funding, literally zero, for news stories in Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, any of those centers. For what? Even smaller cities, they do not need to. But there can be a CBC for northern remote communities, northern Alberta, northern British Columbia, whatever, northern Quebec. And I do think maybe you could make the case for certain parts of Quebec that would be underserved in the free market with French language. Like, I do kind of get that argument. But I don't know. Maybe I just don't know enough about the Quebec media landscape, but it's still a dramatic cut because there doesn't need to be CBC taxpayer money going to Quebec City or Montreal stories. That's so ridiculous that needs to exist. So I would do a dramatic cut in CBC's public funding, probably like 95% cut. Just do still, if you want to cover the price of groceries in the Northwest Territories, because probably that isn't going to be a story that gets much coverage without a public broadcaster or certain stories in remote communities. That's about it.
The CBC. I worked on the Air Farce. I worked on the Red Green Show. I then left. I came back. I worked at CBC Edmonton. I worked at CBC Toronto. Left. Came back again. I took a pay cut to come back to the CBC. I used to walk around the CBC Broadcast Center when I was 19 years old and sneak into the newsroom. And I thought, I want to be at this place at some point. This is the heart of this building, the news organization. And it has gotten so far away from what it was. The CBC should not be a polarizing force. It needs to bring Canadians together, and it has the infrastructure to be able to do that. But until there's a recognition of the problem from management, nothing will happen. And they fail to recognize this. I am willing.
The thing is, what he's explaining there, I don't think will ever happen. The CBC will never truly be this neutral, fair organization that pulls people together, in my opinion, when it's getting all this taxpayer money. There's just a whole bunch of perverse incentives for CBC to try to benefit the people that they think they're getting that money from. They might not even be correct in that, but I don't think it's going to be this kumbaya great place for open dialogue if they're getting all that taxpayer money. It might be in the free market where they actually have to compete.
I would be willing to sit down tomorrow with the new president to talk about some of this stuff, right? But good people are leaving. They're being forced out, and their concerns are being dismissed because it's about protecting reputation. Well, here's some news. I don't have to be wanting to destroy the CBC because management and executives are doing a great job of that on their own.
That was that was funny, man. Mic drop moment. Okay, I'm almost done here. I got a couple more. And the next clips are, I think I'm actually just going to play one more. This clip was going around on X today. I actually haven't even seen it yet, but we'll play it here. Okay. Former CBC employee Karen Johnson describing how clearly toxic it was to work within CBC, name calling, humiliation, and more. This is what our tax dollars are funding. Let's take a look at this clip here.
You know, you later described what you experienced as part of like a broader workplace culture problem, not just those specific incidents that you mentioned. What led you to believe that, and what was happening behind the scenes?
So when you're hired, if I don't know if anybody knows this, when you're hired at CBC or any other sort of newsroom, you have a 9-month probation. During that 9 months, things should be brought up to you if there's concerns or what have you. That usually what happens. I was actually days to my probation being over when I got called in to say that I wasn't standing in the right place of a weathered green screen, which I've been doing for 25 years. I wasn't giving accurate information, but I've never had a complaint about my information.
That sounds like a government organization. That sounds like the type of crap that would be brought up at some big bureaucratic thing. Just so confusing.
So all this started to tag on. I was humiliated in the newsroom when I was told to not go into studio, told to wait. I was berated. I was screamed at, and then told, what am I going to make things better to improve the situation? A situation that I didn't even cause. I was just doing what I was told to do. Things like that. I got written up for having a thick eyeliner on my makeup, on my face. And we had makeup artists who did our makeup. So that was a comment I had gotten from an executive producer. She's nice, but she wears too much eyeliner. Out of my hands. I was called a bimbo on day 10, that I sounded like a bimbo on the air. That was one of the criticisms that I had received. I'd never been called that in my life. Even a brown Barbie, which was not great.
Was that from someone who supervised you?
Yes, that was actually my producer in day 10 on the job.
And that led you eventually to write to the president. Tell us about that.
Yes. So I went through the union. I went through the president. I had a case. I even hired an external lawyer. I was getting nowhere. And I thought, I have to bring it to somebody's attention because honestly, I felt like I was in Alice in Wonderland, and you have all those mirrors and you see these doors and you think that there's an opening and there's a...
Okay, so I'm going to finish my stream there. I will probably make a video or go live later today. I'm sure I will, but if not, I'll be going live on my other YouTube channels as well. Not going live, but making videos. If you're not aware of those. One's called Eric Videos. And then this other one is this one here. If you want to check it out. I'm trying to get this one to 1,000 subscribers. It's called Eric News right there. But my other channel has like 52,000 subscribers. But this one I've been kind of playing around with lately, just trying to bump up the numbers. So check that out if you want. Hey, Spider-Man, how are you doing? Good afternoon. I'm ending the stream though, so I'm about to go. Unless someone else has a question, I'll answer some questions real quick in the chat if you want. But this will be the end of my stream just because I want to have this video kind of stand alone. So maybe people can watch it later if they're interested. But yeah, maybe I'll go live later, like I said, or make another video. We'll see what happens. I'm just going to kind of play it by ear because, yeah, anyway. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Please like, please subscribe. Have a great day.